kind of, it harkens back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where like the person you were before diagnosed and went through treatment is no longer the person that you are now.
Mm.
Longer you try to hold on to that person and the longer you try to become that person again, the harder you're making it for yourself. And so you really do have to go through this mentality of divorcing that person, like acknowledging that they're still there and that they existed and that happened. You can no longer be that person. And that's okay.
In this episode, we'll be learning life lessons from a cancer survivor who is currently celebrating 10 years as a sole survivor of a rare cancer, with publishing of his book entitled Cancer, Musical Theater, and Other Chronic Illness. Welcome to the show, Edward. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm even doing much better right now than I'm speaking with you. I get the chance and the opportunity to sit down with you virtually, all the way from Germany, and you all the way there in the US, and we have this opportunity to converse and talk about your own life journey and your own life experience with cancer. Thank you so much for sharing this message with the world. Thank you for opening up yourself to the world to learn from what you have gone through and how you were able to survive the rare cancer disease. So I'd just love us to jump into it already. I would love to learn from your life story already. How was life like for you before, and how were you before you found out that you had cancer?
I was pretty young, so I was in my early 20s when I found out. I was 24 when this little tumor under my arm showed up. At the time I was diagnosed, I turned 25, so we're just going to say mid-20s. I mean, I was young, I was beautiful, I had life ahead of me, and I was excited for everything that I was doing, and, that kind of came along and derailed everything. Being young and full of life and not afraid of anything, I kind of was also like, not that I was, king of the world and everything around me, as we all kind of tend to do in our 20s, at least in America. So, that was definitely something that got left behind. Changed about me after the fact. Cancer knocked me down a few pegs, as it would. You receive a grave diagnosis like that where they tell you your chances of survival are not that high. That is just like, want to be indignant and be like, oh yeah, well, I'll show you. And I think part of me was like that. But there's something in your brain that goes off that's like, oh, people do die. And, I've lost friends and family like throughout my life, and I've seen it happen. I know it happens, but, been to funerals. But when you're told, like, I guess, like, you accident or something happens and you just go, but like, this is a weird circumstance because you're kind of told like trajectory, you might die. And that is very different than like the split second it takes in a car accident. Name other thing that you can be like killed from. Really after the fact helped me put my feet back on the ground of like, okay, how am I going to approach life now? That became a very difficult conversation, much to my surprise, because you don't really get to see a lot of real raw conversation around what happens after you're out of treatment. I spoke with someone the other day that was like, oh, you're done with cancer, and so like, you just go back to your life. And it was like, changed. A lot has changed, and so you just kind of have to get your footing again and figure out who you are and what you want to do.
Wow. Yeah, and I'm just so curious to know what kind of rare cancer disease that was. What was the name, and can you share?
It's rare enlarged B-cell Burkitt's like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Misdiagnosed at the first hospital I was at, and then when I finally eventually left there for a second opinion, it was given to me. Real diagnosis. Very interesting transitional period, needless to say.
Yeah.
It's very rare. It's no reason for me to have had it. It typically in children under the age of 12 who live in certain parts of Africa. So there's like I am neither of those things, and so why would that happen to me? And so it was this very strange as to why in my body. And so of course naturally I was in a lot of case studies and a lot of protocol studies and doing why is this happening to you kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm so sorry about that. I'm so sorry to hear that. Yeah. Well, like you shared earlier, I mean, before all of this happened, you felt like you are the king of the world, living your life basically, enjoying, having fun, I believe. And then you first got the first diagnosis, but you're like, okay, it was false. And then finally it got, confirmed, yes, this is a rare disease. Going for treatment started. Then, have to start taking drugs. Can you walk me through this whole journey and experience from it's been, you know, getting done on you, like you realizing, yes, this is this could be the end of it all. This could be the end of life for me. And then, going through the whole process of even going through the treatment and not even knowing if it's going to be successful or not.
I mean, hearing anything like that is not good. Like you don't really respond well. I think my initial reaction kind of shut down, like I just was kind of like, oh, you're going to do something like cancer is bigger than you. And there's only so much that you as an individual can do. Healing process. That time I did nothing to help my healing process. Like drank my way through chemo. I did all kinds of stuff that I should not have been doing. Putting myself at risk in various circumstances. I was and to beaches and gym, which sounds really benign, but when you have no immune system because of the treatment that you're going through, any kind of little germ that's a little bit off, get out. And because I was doing these things, I had complications along the way that made that journey even harder than it had to be. I still did them. So, you're a weird headspace of journeying your way through it. Be kind to yourself in the sense that you want to have an identity. You want to feel like yourself. You want to look in the mirror, and even though you're completely unrecognizable as the person you were before, let's say that's me, and still do these things. And that's not always to the best of your situation. It certainly wasn't mine. I mean, chemo and drinking is not on alcohol will do a number on your liver. So
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, of course, of course. And you write all of that in your book, right? Which we're going to talk about very, very soon. You talked about, sex, drugs, and then cancer in your book. But right now you are celebrating your, 10th year anniversary of being free of cancer. How is that like for you? How has it been like, being free of cancer?
it's weird, right? I mean, the first time that I was told I was a sole survivor was at 5 years. My oncologist I had an appointment with her. We were checking in. She was like, you're a sole survivor. And I was like, sorry, what? Idea. No one told me. It wasn't a thing that was on the radar. Being at 10 years and obviously still being alive and having not had it come back again, thank God. That sole survivor title kind of continues, and it's a weird one to hold. Thinking I'm the only person that's made it this far without bad happening is such a weird. And you would think oh my God, it's just so uplifting and so wonderful to have this kind of title of being sole survivor, but it kind of goes into that why me? Why was it me? Why am I the person that lived through this and not someone else? And I mean, I'll take it. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
It's a weird perspective, especially looking back as far as this was. Parts of it feel like it were just, it was last week, and parts of it feel like it never happened in the first place. So it's of mental gymnastics and kind of playing Tetris with your thoughts and feelings and how they all kind of line up together and make you the person you are. But my old perspective to look back and think this time, March of 2023, I'm years ago at this point, I, know what was going to happen.
Yeah. Wow. But here you are today, alive, looking as handsome as ever. And, healthy also, for sure. Yeah. And so, you documented all of this in your book. You wrote about your experiences there in the book. But I would just love you to share some of the biggest changes that you experienced in the course of, going through the treatments, the after treatments, and even after the doctor told you, yes, you are a survivor. What are some of the biggest changes that you've experienced in life?
Changes I've experienced in life. Not 25 anymore.
No.
Fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of this is going to come down to perspective. My perspective is so different 5 years ago, from 10 years ago, from 12 years ago when all of this started. And that's a thing. You want to be able to grow, you want to be able to change. And I think humans inherently change every day. Something like that is certainly not micro. Coming out on the other side, like my relationships with my family, so much stronger than they were. Not that they were bad before, but because of that huge experience, like we're tight, like we're going to be fine. Like parents are still together, my sisters are alive and happy, and we all talk to each other. There's the group family text. We all get together as often as we can. Nurtured it. It really kind of threw everything into a perspective that was like either of us could be gone at any second. So let's spend as much time together as we can. Part of it too is relationships with friends, like a whole lot of people that I had cancer. I did it to myself, and my family knew, and my closest friends knew, but I wasn't putting it on social media anywhere. I wasn't telling anyone inside my little circle. Relationships with those people got stronger. Of one who didn't speak to me again, but that's not the point. Like, that's the whole thing. That's whatever. But I know who's going to be there for me, and I know who's going to go to bat for me, and I know who's going to like show up with a shovel if I ask him to, and like, let's go hide the bodies. It's I know who my people are. I had already known them. They were already friends, but it was like, are my people.
Yeah. So you got to learn about, the importance of close, tight relationships with people, and about how important life is, and how time is so precious. Yeah. And I mean, it's not a funny thing to be diagnosed of cancer and then be told, yeah, you might not make it or something like that. So I really admire your strength and courage to pull through. And I'm also thankful for the people that I had around you, apart from the person that left, which we're not going to talk about, like you said. But
We don't need to talk about them.
we don't have to talk about them. Okay. So instead of that, we're going to talk about your book now. We're going to talk about in your book, you share your experience talking about chemo, you talked about alcohol, like you talked about already, drinking and traveling. You talked about sex, and you talked about heartbreak in your book too. So can you share more about these and behind the book also?
So, inspiration behind the book actually kind of came from someone else. Come from me. I knew I wanted to write something, but I didn't know what I wanted it to be. It wasn't until I had met someone who was recently cancer-free also, kind of occurred to me that the experience I was having after they told me, you're cancer-free, you can go now, thank you so much, you get to live, congratulations, everything felt wrong. Go through the motions of doing all the things that I had done before, and it wasn't working. It just became very worrying, because it was like, what has happened to me? Like, who have I become? Like, what do I become? Where am I going? So stuck. And this was like for 3 years that I felt this way. To cover it up with like going about, doing auditions for shows and working and holding jobs and creating things and hiding behind all of that, because I didn't know who I was still yet. The new me, I didn't know who they were yet. Kind of exactly the same thing to me. And it was like, hold up, stop. Talk about this a little bit more. Ended up talking to them for a couple hours about how they felt and what their day-to-day was like, and it was the exact same as mine. And so that's kind of what made me be like, this is, I think, what I want to write this book about. Like, you go through this epic odyssey of like treatment and being diagnosed to your body and what happens to your brain, and like some of it's funny, like in the moment it was not funny, but looking back at it, it's like, okay, that was ridiculous. But the conversation piece of this that is not had is after the fact. You're cancer-free. Oh my God, congratulations. Enjoy the rest of your life. Have a good one. And you're just like, oh. After the news of was no like living cancer, and they would continue to monitor and make sure everything's okay, you're still walking on eggshells, because that could come back at any moment. You're also like, oh, here looks the way that it used to. And the scary part of having to rebuild a life for yourself happens. Where do I work? Because what I was doing before doesn't make me happy. It feels wrong. And like with me, like there would be moments where I was like, oh, just shut up. Like them talking, it was just like, like none of this matters. And really is just kind of re-navigating bar, and it's scary, and during the worst of it, to like the sex and drugs and relationships kind of thing, used all of those things to numb myself so that I could kind of exist without having to think before I like drank my way through chemo. Like my doctor said I could go out and have one drink, and I went out and I had 17 of them, and like I just got totally tanked. Should not have done that, and I necessarily have any complications per se directly from doing that, which is astounding because my liver was taking a beating anyway. Like I like had my friends over and we shaved my head and we had like pot brownies and I just got high as a kite them before, and I didn't know how to regulate them, so it was just like, these are delicious, and everyone was like, what are you doing? Relationship wise, I mean, like and I was with the boyfriend that I was with at the time, like broke up with me during chemo. Like he left, and I found out later he was seeing someone else the whole time. In the moment I was so angry and I was so hurt about it, because it was like, well, how dare you? And like, do what I'm going through, when really what I was going through is why that happened. That's not my fault. And at the same time, you ask someone that you're like not married to, don't have like a real commitment to, been together for about a year at that point, ask them to like, that's hard. That's a hard experience, a hard thing to ask. And I always say, like even if I was faced with that situation now, would I be able to stay, be able to hang around? Like, I don't know the answer to that. I just don't. I don't think any of us do. I don't think it's fair to ask someone to hold to that expectation how we would react ourselves. Now, of course, this is a blanket statement. There's nuance and other things that go into this, other considerations, like you're married, you have kids, like what the dynamic of the relationship, that of course will affect this answer. Me being 25 at the time and only being in a relationship with this guy for like a year, really owe me anything. For him to leave, like, yeah, that hurt me a lot, but it's his right, and he absolutely needed to do what was best for him, and that's what he did. So it didn't feel good, but because of that, and find guys to come over, and I didn't care who they were or what they looked like. If they were willing to, I was with it, because I just wanted to feel wanted. I wanted to feel pretty, like you look like crap during this whole period of time, and it was very much like, I want to feel pretty.
Yeah.
Please. And that was scary and sad on every level, and lessons learned. There's not like, it hurt at the time doing all of that and experiencing all of that, but in the long haul, I wouldn't trade it for anything, because I learned so much about myself and other people. Well, and maneuver with myself because of those circumstances.
Yeah. I hope you right now feel pretty in your body, you feel good, or do you sometimes still feel as if you still have cancer in your head, shaven or something like that? How do you feel right now, 10 years after?
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
Some days I'm like, oh, you are gorgeous. And then other days it's like, oh, just go back to bed.
Yeah, I mean, don't we all do? We all feel that way sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, that's so deep, actually. That's that's.
I mean, and here's the thing, like, because it is such a serious subject, and because it's not fun, I purposefully made the book as funny as I could, because I do want people to read it and laugh at it and have a good chuckle on the perspective, and like using me as like the conduit, if you will, to like be able to laugh circumstance that's not great.
Yeah, I understand.
And because of laughter, like, you have a better understanding of it because your guard's down. There's a lot of stories in there that are not great, but I jazz them up a little bit. little sparkle to it to make it more digestible.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I said that's true because I was reading the reviews, for example, on Barnes and Noble's websites, where you have the book also available. It's also available on Amazon. And one reviewer or someone who reviewed the book said Edward is not seen short of a total TF moment of his journey with us. And someone also, you also talk about, someone also talk about it being so hilarious and sarcastic humor being shared in the book. And I'm like, oh, this must be a very good book to read.
I haven't read it. I haven't even saw that there were reviews on Barnes and Noble. I haven't looked.
Yeah, they are. They are some. They. I was checking them out. I'm like, oh yeah, this is
Oh
good.
God.
Yeah.
Do I need to go read these now? Should I do that?
Yes, you can, because they are good reviews. Just good reviews. Yeah.
I'll leave it to you to let me know if they're good. So if they are, then I'll go do it.
Yeah, something that's caught my attention why when I checked your book out was that you wrote about being divorced from yourself or with yourself. And I was like, oh, Edward must truly walk me through this. I want to understand what it means to be divorced from oneself.
It's kind of, it harkens back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where like the person you were before diagnosed and went through treatment is no longer the person that you are now. The longer you try to hold on to that person and the longer you try to become that person again, the harder you're making it for yourself. And so you really do have to go through this mentality of divorcing that person, like acknowledging that they're still there and that they existed and that happened. You can no longer be that person. And that's okay. And that's actually like, what I was talking about earlier with like, you get to figure out what your life is like. That is exciting. You have the choice to do whatever you want. And I remember having where it was like, do I just like, at that point I had lived in New York for quite a long time and I had a great network of friends, like I said. And I had moments where I was like, I just like move out of New York and start like change my name and start my whole life over. Like, oh, like I don't want to be here. Like this is uncomfortable. I want to start over. Not have this on my, like have this stain on my record, and obviously I didn't do that, but the thought occurred to me, and maybe that is too much of an extreme of an example of divorcing yourself to become who you really are, but that's where my mind went. My mind went to like change your name, move out of the country, go become a whole different person.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
So I didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I really understand what you're saying. I mean, it's about living the past, letting the past be in the past. Just take the lessons out of it, and put those lessons in a bag, and then move into the future with the lessons you
Toss
got.
it in the river, just out the window.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of lessons to be learned from your story and everything that you experienced, and then also one could at the same time basically go through reading the tragic stories and all of that in the book. So I will encourage everyone to get the book. It's available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes and Nobles. The information, everything that they need to know, where the books are, the reviews, everything, is available on your website. The link to your website will be in the show notes of this episode also. So I encourage everyone that is interested to just pick the book up and learn more about Edward from there. But I'd love to know, you've survived cancer already. This is your 10th year or over 10 years now already. Can you share some tips on how to, survive cancer? Like for people out there who are still battling with it, for example, what did you have to do? Was it only chemo? Was it more than chemo? What did you have to do to survive cancer?
This is a two-part answer, right? So like what you have to do to survive cancer is, right, you have to do chemo or radiation, or now there's like CAR T cells or stem cell transplant or whatever. And I kind of did all of that. CAR T cells hadn't been invented yet, but I did chemo, radiation, and a stem cell transplant. Even though I did everything else that I should not have done to make that work, I still did what my protocol was. They're not. Like my mom has mixed chemo before, she understands it. And there were a couple instances where we caught mistakes, and they could have been really bad mistakes. We just were like, no, 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 no. So advocate for yourself and stand up for yourself if something doesn't feel right, or if you have questions, ask the questions. I can't stress that to know. Get to consent. Like at any point during that, I could have been like, stop, I don't want to do this. And I did that a couple times where I was like, this is why we're not doing this anymore. That's part one. Part two is because everything that you're with and experiencing with treatment is so hard and like just makes everything harder. My kind of like hindsight is 2020 kind of thing with this is like this without knowing I was doing it. Moments to create joy. myself happy. Like, I surrounded myself with friends and family. I was very seldom alone in my hospital room. There all the time. I had family there all the time. It was a revolving door of people. Was that a distraction? Yeah, to a point it was, but it was also being able to look back at that period of time and have something so fun. There's an example I use that I talk about sometimes in the book. It's listed in there too. At a pizza party in my hospital room. Like, I called the hospital kitchen. I was like, bring some pizza up. And like a bunch of us just sat there. They fought me on it, but I got my way. And we just sat there and ate pizza and like laughed together in my room. And like, it was so stupid and simple, but it was so fun. You know, I mean, so do stuff like that, you know, like that's what's going to make it. And even hear people being like, oh, well, I just don't like it. Or like, what if nobody wants to come? It's like, no, of course they do. Like, people are inherently good and they want to help you and they want to help you feel better. Like, if it's in crowd mentality too, if somebody goes down and they're hurt, like, people crowd around them to help them. They don't like kick them. They help. They stop and they help, because the instinct is someone have the cognizance to say, I want people around. I need help. I want whatever that is. Because it'll create memories that are not terrible. Because I could look back at that period of time and be like, ugh, time I was in the hospital for 10 days and I was just throwing up and I was sick all over the place. And, you know, I lost like 15 pounds in 5 days, which, like, I looked great, but, you know, whatever. And I could only talk about that. But like, what sticks out to me, because our brains like romanticize things naturally, back at that, and I'm like, God, I was so lucky to have some good times during that. As bad as that was, like, my friend Bobby and I went over to Long Island City and had sushi with some of our friends, and we like sat by the river and watched the boats go by, and like, that's a memory that's like so good during that period of time. You know, you have to proactively create those. Look back however many years later and be like, ah, those people, they really had my back and they were there.
Yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. Yes, creating wonderful memories to, you know, to keep you going, to keep you running, and before you know it, the positivity you create around you will help you to change even your health and cure you of cancer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if there's something you could tell any cancer patients out there or any survivor out there, what would that be?
Be to stand up for yourself. You know, like, the situation you're in, it's not great. And, you know, what we just talked about with like creating memories and making happy times in a bad situation, don't feel like something's right, or you don't feel right, or something's off with treatment or how you feel or something that's going on around you, speak up, advocate for yourself. And if you can't ask someone else to do it for you, I'm going to speak up. But also, my mom was there and she knew what she was talking about more so than I would. You know, me being emotionally heightened because things were so bad and being like, I don't want to do this, it kind of got mitigated by her saying, this is the right thing, we should do this. And, or, you know, this seems wrong, we need to stop. Having someone by your side, whether it be someone who is family or a advocate through the hospital, or I know some social worker programs or whatnot provide people who are patient advocates. Have someone to speak for you if you're not able to do it yourself, because that's going to make it easier for you, and at least you'll have a better understanding of what's happening to you. Because it's unfair to ask someone to like go through cancer treatment and then fully understand the chemo regimens that you're getting. Like, no one's going to do that. Like, unless you were already a doctor, no one is going to know that. So yeah, having someone there to advocate.
Yes. Edward, I've learned so much from you in this short conversation that we've had. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the fact that you opened up about your story, about the things you did, you know, the whole experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and, you know, mixing that all up with your cancer experience. Thank you for being so vulnerable and for sharing all of this in your book. Also, ask you further questions that we could not cover in this conversation, or maybe they want to work with you, or maybe get your book, for example. What's the best way to do this?
find me on Instagram. It's just at Edward Miskie. You can find me there. I have a link in my bio that leads to a bunch of other fun stuff that I do that you can kind of poke around.
Yeah.
That's the most direct channel to get to me. Follow me, send me a message, click the link. There's tons of things that you can do there. There's other podcast interviews. There's other places to buy the book. I always lead with Barnes & Noble because I'm the most proud of it. But, it's where you can find me. I'm also on TikTok.
Great. I'm going to add the link to you have this Linktree link. I'm going to add that to the show notes of this episode. So I encourage people to just click on it and they will find all the other, links or websites that they could check you out on. Thank you so much, Edward. I really appreciate this. It was a great pleasure speaking with you and learning from you. I learned so much from you in this episode. Stand up for yourself is one thing I'm going to take home with me from this episode. Thank you.
Do it.
Thank you very much.